Greetings, Earthlings.
We are Johnita Francis and Trish Rock, your empowerment influencers.
No fluff. I've stopped it already. No fluff conversations about life, empowerment, spirituality, and freedom.
Yay! Thank you for joining us for today's show, sponsored by Holistic Bliss Magazine. Hello, Johnita. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Trish. Oh my goodness. So that's a great start to the show, isn't it? When my mouth is doing something, I don't know what my tongue was doing, and my brain left the planet.
Janita has left the building.
Yeah, that's it. Oh yeah.
So once
Now
again, we've
I
got
don't
our
know about you.
beautiful live audience here on Facebook, and if you are listening to this podcast somewhere, please leave us a review and let us know how much you love our banter.
Yeah. No, I don't know about you, but I'm really like affirming and hoping that we get a nice, easy topic tonight.
Hallelujah to that. You,
Yeah, and the thing is, we've had some really cruisy ones. This is our eighth episode. You just reminded me earlier, and I
yeah,
have so much fun doing this. But it's the eighth episode.
that's two
Um,
months.
that's oh, that is 2 months.
Isn't that
Does that feel
crazy?
like that for you?
Doesn't feel like that for me. And, the crazy thing about these topics, guys, is that we did actually choose them, but we still kind of dreading them coming up.
When I poke them into the wheel of wisdom, I think, oh my God, what were we freaking talking about? Like, who came up with that? And then, oh
Yeah.
shit, that was in my list. Oh shit, I can blame
What?
Trish for that one.
Where was the moon position that day?
Yeah, I think our Mercury was strongly aspected.
Oh, 2 months
Feeling
ago.
great.
Yes.
All right. So, are we pumped? Are we
We
psyched?
are. We are. Let's go. We'll get this wheel in action, and let's please be kind to us, Will, and let's see what we have got today. So it's coming up on screen now.
Up.
Spin that wheel.
Loving unconditionally.
Oh gosh, what a message for today. I swear these topics sometimes are just the messages for us for the day.
It, it's almost like the universe goes, "Did you get that message
Yeah.
earlier? Did you? Were you listening?" I
You know
actually
the
had
re-
a
you know the reason that's the universe coming and saying, the reason why your day was fucked today is because you're not loving unconditionally.
yeah. I had I needed to make a decision, and I thought, right, I'm just going to go. I've got this book, and I open it randomly at pages, and I look at the number of the page and do a little interpretation on that, and then I read the passage. And the first sentence of the book this morning was, "Did you write that down?" And I'm like, "Shut up, smartasses! Like, just enough with that, all right? Just stop. Just give me what I want and go away. You don't have to rub my face in it." So, right, loving unconditionally. Wow. I actually have a little
Hmm.
bit of an issue with this. Do you mind if I go first?
No, go for it.
Now, I have a little problem with loving unconditionally. I
Hmm.
and this is why. Because when the term unconditionally comes out, it kind of says that no matter what.
Yes.
And I understand that everyone's got different experiences with growing up and their nurturing and their family units and how they give and receive love and what their experiences around that are, but mine was shit. So for me to love unconditionally, where I learnt the unconditional part of loving is with myself. I have conditions on every other single thing in this planet that I love. And this is why, is I have a very good reason why. Because I have to love myself, warts and all. I have to love myself to try again. I have to love myself to go through those lessons and learn and deal with them and come out the other side and get an idea of how to be a better version of myself than what I was the day before. And the more I love myself unconditionally in those terms, the less likely I am to put up with someone who is abusive. And I'm not going to love someone unconditionally that is abusive or disrespectful or deceitful or deliberately hurtful. I loved my husband greatly, But if he does the wrong thing or disrespects me or disrespects our relationship, that is a condition that I place upon the rule of engagement with us, our relationship. And so when I teach people about loving unconditionally, the first person and probably the only person that you should love unconditionally is yourself, and how you learn about yourself and how you apply that knowledge about yourself to make you want to be a better person and make you understand yourself better, understand your triggers, your emotions, um, and that will raise your own standard and your own bar, and then you'll be looking for people because you understand what that looks like and how that feels to be loved wholly and unconditionally because you do it for yourself. So yeah, I know that probably sounds a bit wacko, but I just think that it's everybody comes to the table in every single interaction with something different, and that is the best part about relationships, not just personal ones, but every relationship that you enter into, even with your mates. But and you can embrace that individuality and the changes and what they bring to the table and the different experiences, but I think it's often unrealistic to expect them to love you 100% unconditionally, and for that to be matched or mirrored in the same manner. I just think that's a little bit unrealistic, but it's very realistic to love yourself unconditionally.
Well, herein lies my issue with that, is that if you're loving yourself without conditions, then that's really, what should radiate out, what should radiate out to other people. But there's also a difference here, I think, between the light of someone or their soul and their personality, because I feel that you can love people with no condition, but you don't have to like them. And I just feel that that's a real difference there, because
Oh,
even if you're, and I know that can't bring yourself to even say that you would have any skerrick of love for your natural parents, but that's the personality that you're disliking, not the actual essence of them, which is love. Everybody's essence is love. So they don't
mm,
always bring that through their personality, though. That's the thing. So they're it's it's like with children, though, too. It's like you love your children with no condition, but you don't always like everything they do. so I just feel this unconditional love is it's actually one of my spiritual goals, to love unconditionally, which starts with me, to have no conditions on how I love myself, but to take that to other people too. And I guess that's a daily quandary for me, and a daily lesson and a daily growth for me, because people push my buttons, they trigger me. Can I love them without condition? Can I love them just the way they are? I need to separate the personality out of it to do that, because sometimes the personality is it's not something that gels with me.
yeah,
So, but then when you look at that, that's even a condition, isn't it? That's even a condition.
yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
think
it's
because and you raised a very valid point before about not liking aspects of what people bring to the table based on their personality. So would you, because I don't just love everybody that comes across my path. I wouldn't just give someone love. If there's a rapist and a rapist has done something terrible to another person, there's no way on God's earth I will be giving that person any kind of love. I'll be giving them some other four-letter word.
oh,
But
but it's not about giving them love. It's about loving them unconditionally, but then choosing. In
yeah,
It's like Mother Teresa. She loved
I
everybody
don't.
unconditionally.
Yeah, yeah. See, I just I would struggle with that because my concept of love is not something that I was brought into. It's something that is
Yeah,
a learned mechanism. It wasn't something that was freely offered or
yeah.
freely given. So maybe that's why I come at it from such a completely different angle because I don't love the family that brought me into the world. I just don't.
No,
They're
no,
complete strangers to me. They're absolutely no bearing on my life whatsoever. So
no.
not even about, and personality wise, they're not likable people to start with, but there is absolutely no nurturing love. And I suppose, and I've thought about this quite deeply, is if you had what you thought was a perfect childhood or a lovely childhood, and then you found out years later that your dad was doing something terrible to other kids in the neighborhood, or your mum had this deep, dark secret or something. And I could understand struggling with not liking aspects of their personality or their choices that they've made, but still loving them because they've built that nurturing, loving relationship to begin with. And I think
Mm,
that's probably why I'm able to separate it and just say, look, I just don't don't join the dot with unconditional. I think if people make mistakes, absolutely,
mm,
but I think when they're consistently doing the same things, or they're consistently or deliberately being harmful or hurtful to others, that null and voids my option of going any further with the level of respect or integrity that I have towards that person.
well, in tech,
Sometimes it's
but
complicated.
those are different. Yeah, they're different to loving unconditionally. But I mean, you're not gonna say to your husband, I love you, but there's conditions for that love, because that's not. What if he said that to you?
That would be fine because I would understand that the moral compass is that if you love somebody, you don't cheat on them, you don't betray their trust, you don't
Mm,
harm them in any way, shape, or form. You're not abusive towards them. And these are the sorts of
mm,
things that shape up how I define love. And,
mm,
the love that I have for you is done in the same manner, because of how you are as a human being, what you try to do every single day. And some days we just stuff it up and we get it wrong. And that's okay
mm,
because your intent is always not malicious. It's not
mm,
evil intent or to put someone down or to make someone feel horrible. So,
mm,
and that's how I gauge my love for others, and whether that person is, um, someone that I could love based on those traits. And it is absolutely
mm,
personality, but I don't, and I don't,
mm,
wouldn't normally just love people, which I'm a
mm.
different, so I'm supposed to love everybody apparently, but I just don't
Well,
join in those sorts of
you're not
emotions.
supposed to do anything, there's no shoulds or supposed tos. But
Apparently, Lutherans are renowned for just loving everybody.
but
Perhaps I should learn from them.
in all the higher kind of spiritual teachings, that really is kind of, for me, it feels like a pinnacle to my growth to be able to, not have them in my life doing any harm to me, but to see the essence of them, and you know love that essence of them, not the. I mean, I've been hurt and disrespected and all that kind of thing too, but it's just a case of, um, so in some of the higher spiritual teaching that I listen to, and that I've opt into, it's really it's getting to that point of Buddha and Jesus, I guess, of those ascended masters, of really just saying, I didn't like what you did, but I still love you, but I don't want you in my life, or I just don't know
Love
how
you
to.
from a distance, maybe,
Yeah,
or something. Yeah,
well, it's not even that. I'm like, basic. It's about the oneness. We're all one. We're all one.
yeah.
And so if you're not loving those parts of all those other people, then there's parts in you that you're not loving as well. Is That's how I read it. Um, so for me, if somebody is pushing my buttons, and we've just had a comment there from Nikki, how can you love someone that abuses you? You see, these are two different types of love. It's not love, I'm going to come and give you a hug even though you abuse me. No, it's like, I don't want anything to do with you and you're not in my life. But, I um, thank you for what you've taught me, and on a energetic level, then I have to love you because we're all one energy. I don't know. It's like one or two drops of the ocean. If you're part of the ocean, and there's one or
Yeah,
two drops that you're just going to hate because perhaps they're, not um, because they I was going to say the wrong. They're not the right color, but that's not the right words. But do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
there's two drops in the ocean that have bumped into you, and you've decided that you don't love them, but it's all one ocean. So
yeah,
for me, it's a big pinnacle. But I mean, I haven't had the abuse that you've had, and I understand that there's different levels of openness that people will have, and there's different levels of I say resentment, but it's really not that. It's that I'm not going to let anybody do that to me again. So there are conditions,
yeah,
and I guess because I haven't had that level of abuse, I haven't put up those conditions. But I do have, I'm not going to be with anyone that disrespects me. So while that's a condition, it doesn't mean I don't love the person, or that I can't love them as another human being, but they don't need to be in my life.
yeah, yeah.
So, but
See, I love how
yeah,
you can have a completely, and this is what makes our chat so brain exciting for my little Virgo dominant personality because you come at it from a completely different angle. And I never sit
yeah,
here going, well, you're wrong and fold my arms or anything like that because you've had a very, very different experience from me. So you put on a slant and your openness and your honesty and your ability to just be really raw and talk about it enables me to understand a concept that I've never had exposure to.
yeah,
So
yeah, and
it's really so I walk away thinking, wow, because I've gained something from it.
oh,
When if like you said, I can love them and not have them in my life. I actually, I just don't have any love for them at all. So I can have a previous partner, for example, um, where you love that person very much so, but then when they do that disrespect or that level of abuse, and that is your boundaries have been crossed, there's no coming back from that. That is literally the day that I park it. It comes back to logic brain, and the emotion is just shut down completely from it, and I will
yeah,
process that privately and quietly. So it's not like I park
mm.
it away and I'm not processing it or understanding it. Well, there's lots of lessons to learn from all those scenarios, but I certainly don't. I would not say in a million years that I have any love for that person. There's
No, and
yeah.
Florence just written, there's an innocent peace in soul that can be loved. There absolutely is, and that's really the thing. And I guess my example has been my mum and my dad, who are both very Catholic, but my mum was a nun and kind of got made to go in the convent because that's just what happened in those days. And hated it. You go into the convent. Back then, it was the whole flying nun outfit.
Oh,
She
how
had her
beautiful.
head shaved. She got a number, and they lived in little cells.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was an awful experience for her. So she kept her hair all those years too, just as an aside. And we actually cremated her with her hair that was cut off when she was 20. But uh, so she was always judged and
How did
I,
she get her head around that? Did she ever share that with you? Like,
oh, she
talk
lived
about,
a she lived a real life of shame and guilt, and because back in those days too, if you left the convent, you just get shoved out the back door in the middle of the night, no goodbyes, nothing. The church really shamed you. And then my father was a prisoner of
it didn't make
war.
any sense because you think church is that loving environment, but yet they're doing
Yeah.
that conditional thing too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh,
They're
the
controlling the abuse.
all churches are very conditional, all of them.
No, I've never stepped foot inside one.
No, they're all of them. But I mean, you've got conditions in your pagan religion too. So
Yep.
there's conditions in all of them. But even my dad, like he was a prisoner of war and then he swore to God that he would become a monk or whatever when he got out. But he was a homosexual, so they wouldn't accept him in the church. So he had to come to Australia, get married, all the rest of it, and was never accepted for his homosexuality. Had all the electric shock treatment, had to go and pray for his sins and all the rest of it. So I guess my unconditional love training has been
Wow.
about people's character. Like,
Yeah.
why couldn't they accept my mum and my dad unconditionally for who they were? I guess that's
Yeah.
where mine's come from.
Yeah.
And so it's not an abuse thing. It's more of a, you're why can't you just love people for the way they are? You don't always have to like them, but you
Yeah.
can accept. And as Florence said, there's always that light because there's a piece of light in all of us that is all of us.
Yeah.
So to kind of love that, but it doesn't mean you have to have people in your life. And there's certainly boundaries, but I
Mm.
think boundaries are different to conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So, and so your boundaries with abuse would be a boundary, not a condition for me. But
but see, it's a condition for me because if you cross that,
yes.
I'm out. If you raise your hand to me, I'm out. You cheat on me, I'm out.
So it's a
And I
boundary though. It's a strong
Yeah,
boundary.
that's a condition because if they do
Yes.
that in our relationship, the relationship is no longer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a total condition. I'm
Yeah.
not going to allow myself to be subjected to that ever again. So it's
No, no. And
it,
it's certainly loving unconditionally certainly isn't saying that you do that, but there is a certain sense in there's certain freedom in kind of loving them and letting them go rather than holding the hatred, I guess.
I don't
Same
have the
as
hate, they just don't exist. So I'm very lucky like that because they
mm,
just don't have any impact on my life.
mm,
So it's yeah. So it's really cool. I like the way you
mm,
wow, like you've got such complex parents that copped abuse and disharmony from others. And yet
mm.
you've just got this most beautiful view on love and character and the way you look at things, So your parent did a freaking amazing job, and whether you you picked it
Well,
up and added to it yourself, but
well,
what a
they
beautiful
kind of
foundation.
well, they loved and accepted people,
They
unconditionally,
would have felt
mostly
like
from what I can remember. But
yeah,
yeah, and but there's certainly it's a challenge. I'm not there yet.
yeah,
I'm not there yet. But if there's if I have to put conditions on something, I usually come back to me and just say, well, what are those conditions for? Are they conditions so that I don't get triggered? I usually just bring it back to me, but as you've said, and Nikki and anybody else who's had horrific experiences, it's going to be a different experience for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely. It's
yeah.
kind of cool though because if you grow up in an environment where your parents are both horrible, you've really got two choices. You can think in an envious state that everybody else that had great parents is like, you can be pretty cross with them for having fantastic parents, or you can think, wow, I just can't imagine what that would have been like, or look at how much I've achieved without any maternal or paternal support. Imagine what I could have achieved if I actually had someone around me that gave a shit.
But you
So
didn't choose that life.
no,
If you needed that life this lifetime, you would have chosen
yeah,
it.
but you still process those thoughts. You still think about those things, and I think it's a part of growing and understanding more and understanding how other people approach things too, is to still have those thoughts.
Mm,
So it's and I think that's why you've got to love yourself unconditionally because
absolutely.
you did come in, chose that, you chose the lessons that you did, you chose to cross the path with the people that you're crossing the path with, and that's okay. But I just draw the line at and if Terry knows, my husband knows that if you know, I would expect the same conditions on me because it's the
Mm,
moral compass thing. Is if I'm abusive towards him, he has every right to leave me. I don't expect him to stay in my life. I've
mm,
null and void that contract that we have by disrespecting him or hurting him to that degree. You just
Mm,
not how I view a love. You know, that'd be like me getting a dog and saying I love the dog, but kicking the dog every time I see it and expecting the dog
mm.
to love me. It's just
That's it, and
yeah,
and I think the other thing here is which I started the conversation off with is that we project and attract how we feel about ourselves. So if you are loving yourself with no conditions, unconditionally, then surely we would be attracting um, people who also love themselves unconditionally. And if someone loves themselves unconditionally with no conditions,
yeah.
they're kind of, they sound like two different sentences. But if you're loving
I
yourself
completely
with
understand.
if you're loving yourself with no conditions, then you can fully accept the person in front of you with no condition, because that's a reflection of
The same
you.
life. Yep. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like because what I noticed in growing up was I mimicked what I was involved in. So I thought that that was the way to get your point across. I thought that that's how you behaved. And then when I got my first partner, obviously we were together a very long time, including our childhood. So that mimicked what I grew up with. In the
Yeah.
second relationship, I thought, right, I understand how this works now. I don't want this sort of person. I don't want this sort of person. I focused so much on what sort of person I didn't want that I managed to get another one just like it. Um, but then when I met Terry, I actually didn't have to say to him, if you cheat on me, I'm gone. If you do this, I'm gone. If you do that,
No,
I'm gone.
because he's a
Because
reflection of you.
he was doing the same thing. If you do, and I would 100%, if I did the wrong
Mm,
thing in my relationship, and I know the right and the wrong thing, because for me, it's a moral compass,
mm,
and if you, I'm not saying that, if you have an open relationship and everybody's open and everybody's being happy and there's truth and transparency, no matter how you choose to have that agreement, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be a monogamous relationship, but it does need to be transparent and it does need to be honest and it does need to be one of integrity, however that is agreed upon between the parties involved. So,
mm,
but I didn't have to put any of those rules of engagement forward to Terry because he got it, he understood it, and they were the same rules of engagement for him. So I knew that I had lifted my bar by unconditionally loving myself. Yep, I've got warts. What can I do to fix those warts? Some warts I'm stuck with. Shutting my brain off is a wart I'm stuck with. I'm trying to get my head around that at the moment. But
mm,
it's about recognizing the things that who we are and having a deep, honest look at who we are, and then trying to come out the other side a better version of ourselves.
yeah,
And our
absolutely.
idea of a better version of ourselves, not somebody else's.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all comes down to what we believe, because a belief is really just a thought we keep thinking. So, the beliefs can be changed too, but um,
It's like when we
yeah,
think men are liars and then we go on 500 dates and they all tell us lies. Because we've just already put it out there, all men are liars. So we get all the men that are liars.
yeah, absolutely, because it'll be the universe proving it to you, so you can say, "See, told ya." But I think that's really our journey here. Unconditional love. I feel that's our journey here.
Yeah,
Because no matter, and you'll be the same with the clients you work with, no matter who I work with, and no matter what work I've done on myself, it all comes down to loving unconditionally
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
and self acceptance. So, that's, I just feel it's underneath everything. And years ago, you couldn't talk about that. I created programs on self love, and everyone's going, I don't need self love. I just need more money. I don't
yeah,
need self love. I just need, my ex boyfriend who cheated back.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
you
that's
know,
up yourself if you're self love. You're up yourself. Remember that?
ugh.
Ooh,
But
kisses on the mirror. And I'm like, do you even know what it
but
is?
now, now all of the courses, they're called self love, and people are radiating to them. So
Yeah,
unconditional love is really that self love without conditions. And if you can do that for yourself, then you can do it for other people too, knowing
awesome.
that they are a little drop in the water with us.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
What's your take
mm.
just quickly on projections and mirroring? Okay, you want
Um,
to know why I want to ask?
yeah, I think I don't think it's as clear cut as just a mirror, and I think that a lot of people kind of get mixed up with that, and
Yeah,
they say, oh well, that person's really mean. Oh well, I must be really mean. No, I would say, how am I being mean to myself? If this person is doing this, how am I doing that to myself?
yeah,
That's how I see the mirroring. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I see something similar. I see it as obviously because I'm not an abusive person, but I
Yeah.
was attracting abusive people, and
Yes.
I think it's because
But that was to learn
the person
self-empowerment, which you now teach.
is teaching, yeah, and it's about for me, it's about because I thought to myself, but I don't cheat on people. Why am I attracting cheaters? But it's about learning the lesson that's involved in self love and self care and putting your boundaries in place and lifting your standards so that you don't put up with nonsense like that. So it's for me, that
Mm.
whole projection was more about them holding up like a card for a module and me saying, oh, I want to learn about that module so
Yeah,
I can enrich
absolutely.
my own experience and understand that deeper. Not necessarily that I was a cheater. I would never cheat because I know what it feels like to be cheated on.
No, but how are you cheating yourself?
Yeah, well, by dating idiots, clearly.
Which cheat well, the cheating there in your energy is about the boundaries and the respect,
Yep, yep,
which then you've got to go to that. How were you not respecting yourself?
yep,
How were you not looking after yourself? How were you not loving yourself? And then all of those got sorted and you found someone who didn't cheat.
yep. It's
So,
crazy. So it's that
yeah,
real, yeah. I wanted to get your take on that because we kind of touched on it a little bit about, like if, especially if we're all connected. And, I know a lot of people would be going, hang on a minute, I'm not connected in any way, shape, or form to my rapist. And I would never molest somebody and I was molested. So sometimes that whole mirror projection and how society sees it needs to be clarified. And
it
I really
does.
feel as though, you know, to have your rights taken away as a child and be molested by a parental figure um, put me in a situation where I could either A, do it myself to my son, or B, work out that that is where the line is drawn and the ancestral baggage stops now and that's never going to happen again and take a
Mm.
stand towards that. And I think that's where the projection in the mirror comes up. It's like, here's the lesson. What are you going to do with it, buddy? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And once again, that gets back to loving yourself without conditions.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Yep.
that's what your parents taught you,
Yep.
that you wouldn't be loved without conditions, and the conditions were abuse, etc.,
Yep.
etc. They
I
were
had
the
to figure that myself.
conditions.
Mhm.
So, but you learnt over time that you could love yourself without those conditions.
Yep.
So let me ask you, with your son, you wouldn't have. Do you have conditions in loving him?
Look, I do. I absolutely do. Around attitude, how he conducts himself, around honesty, around transparency. When he was little, when I first busted his father cheating on me, we had a shared custody arrangement, and it wasn't too bad because he was 3, just before he turned 3. So he was little. But then as he started going to school and he had outside influences, and his dad worked out that he could maneuver memories and plant memories, that became harder because my son became very angry towards me because I had the rules in the house and I wasn't, you're not allowed to swear and scream and carry on and do whatever you wanted. And his father had very relaxed rules because it was easier to manipulate children when you have no rules and it's a fun house. So I did have to have conditions upon, if you're going to misbehave, these are the consequences. If you're going to do this, these are the consequences. And there was a point
Mm,
when he was about 8 years of age where he was a right little chauvinistic ratbag. And I
mm.
knew that it was his father's projection on him. I knew it was implanted memories. And I understood all of that. But I still needed to find a way to teach this kid that without it becoming a sling fight about, he said, she said, because there's adults involved here, not a child, in the whole cheating scandal. So I had to find a way to explain to my son without it becoming a he said, she said, that, there's honesty and then there's truth. and you were really little when all of this happened, and you don't really have any clear memory on what actually happened. So perhaps you can stop being so angry with me until you
mm,
actually understand the concept around what really happened. And
mm,
he's actually going to be 13 this November, and he's only just worked out last September when he honestly sat down with me, man to man, and said to me, Mum, what really happened?
mm,
And before he came for a holiday, I was so nervous because I understood that he was 12. I understood that he probably would have some questions. And I also understood that I'm sick to death of lying for some bastard who cheated on me for 9 years. And I'm sick to death of being the person that copped all of my son's anger because I refused to use a child as a pawn. I refused to say, but your dad did this, but your dad did this, and your dad did that. I just shut up
mm,
about the whole thing.
mm.
So,
But they're like boundaries as well that you've got with him. Like if, um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just see a lot of like parents whose kids are in jail and things like that. They still love them, without condition, but there has to be boundaries, I guess. I don't know. I'm just seeing conditions differently to boundaries, I guess, and you're seeing it as one thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and I do see it as one thing. It is
yeah.
one thing because it's a behavior modification or correction, especially in a child. I don't want my son to grow up and go into jail, so he needs to understand that there's rules and how you treat people and how you
You'd
know,
still love him though if he was in jail, wouldn't you? Surely.
look, I think that the nurturing that I have with my son is different because I actually did nurture him as a baby. I actually did take all of the non-nurturing and being treated the way I was treated as a child. And although I didn't have first-hand experience of how to be a mum, I certainly had this vision of what that would look like. I knew that I could be a mama bear. I knew that I needed to be a disciplinarian. Knew I needed to make sure that I was raising a functioning adult.
Mm.
So I would still love him because I had that nurturing from the get-go, absolutely. But would
Yeah,
he know about it if he did absolutely something completely disgusting? I'd put my foot so far up that kid's ass, Trish, his nose would bleed for a month. So
absolutely. But
yeah,
there's but
serious
there's
boundaries.
but there's the unconditional love, and I think that's kind of reflected. Like a really good example would be when the babies are young and you've had no sleep, and it's crying again at 3 o'clock. I mean, you still love this little baby, um, despite its behavior at that time. And then obviously you can teach behavior later and put
Yeah.
boundaries around behavior, but there's still that essence of love there. So,
Well, look,
um,
absolutely. My ex-husband actually molested me. So he had sex with me while I was asleep, and that's how I conceived my son. So
mm,
there's all sorts of recipes there for me to have problems with connecting with my son. But you know what?
yeah,
That's not my son's issue. That was two adults' issues. And I've always
yeah,
been able to separate them because I
mm,
understand how to separate it because I grew up with nothing. So
yeah,
that's why I'm able to say, look, there's love, and then there's not going to happen, sunshine. You're in a whole other world for me, and that's where you can
mm.
stay. Yeah,
Absolutely, and that's the boundaries that we all need to put in as humans. And I'm even doing that now. Like people used to say, well, if people are pushing your buttons, you need to just kind of keep staying there, or keep having those triggers because obviously there's something in you that needs fixing. I'm like, no, some people are just annoying, and I don't really want to keep being triggered. So
yeah,
goodbye.
yeah,
So I think, it's that whole mirror thing as well and the reflection. It's like, yeah, I, for me, I can just kind of say, I can love that part of them that is their essence
yeah,
because that's the same part of me. If I'm not loving that part in them, that is their essence, their life energy, then I'm not loving myself because it's the same. It's the same thing. So I can
yeah,
still love that part of them, but not want anything to do with their human form.
yeah,
Yeah. So that for me is loving unconditionally. But there's higher spiritual teachings on this that it's just reminding me of Jesus on the cross. I'm sorry to bring that up, everybody. I'm not religious, but Jesus on the cross still loving his persecutors. but not what they're doing to him, right? There's a difference. So, but I'm not there yet. It's still
I'm
something
sure as
that,
shit not there yet.
oh,
I don't need to be there. I've been around for too many freaking years. But
oh
yes,
dear.
I
And
and I found this topic really interesting, and I found how um, the takeaway thoughts that I got from this topic has been really cool, and I will mull over it and I will process it and I'll keep thinking
who
about
picked it? This is one of yours.
it. Damn it, I set myself up.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but it's just and
Yeah,
I will
it's
mull over it. But
interesting.
as far as
Yeah.
loving people are concerned and connecting, I would rather connect in with people that actually do want to do the right thing
Oh, absolutely. And
as
that's
opposed to
loving
holding
you.
space
Well,
for
that's
something
loving
that
yourself unconditionally,
yeah,
wanting to be around people who reflect that. So, yeah, no, that's good. Very good. And in this month's online Holistic Bliss magazine, there's really great articles about magic, and I think this is really magic and miracles, and I think this really blends in beautifully to talking about unconditional love, because a lot of the articles that are in there, if you go online to holisticbliss.com, holisticblissmagazine.com, you can read them. But the articles, you finding magic and miracle in your life is really coming to self-love, isn't it? It's coming back to seeing that part of you that you can learn to love unconditionally, because that's where the magic is.
yeah, absolutely, 100%
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Ah, right.
So
I think
another fun
look
one. It's going to cause a bit of controversy in the comments, I think.
what we're here for. Let's have a little look. Oh, Blowen's had a good chat. Hold on, let us catch up with here. If you're disconnected from the people projecting unconditional love, if you are disconnected from the people projecting unconditional love is easy. There is nothing to lose. You're disconnected from the people projecting unconditional love is
Yeah, so
easy.
it's still projecting that love, seeing that there is a part of them that is the same essence as us, but you're disconnected from them. You might have to catch up with Florin in the comments after our podcast is finished.
Yeah, yeah. And look, that's great. I don't have any issues with that. But for me personally, if I've got 100% of
Mm,
love available, okay, and 20% of the population, so I'm
mm.
going to spend that 100% of my love putting all it into the 80% of the population.
Oh,
And I'm just going
absolutely.
to not worry about all those other people. I could
No,
just look at that as my poo and my pee maybe, which leaves me, and I don't think about it again.
that's
I'm happy to think about it like that. But yeah,
that's
yeah,
right. But this is going to sound gross, but you should even love your pill and your wee, because they're actually making your body work well. Unconditional love.
it's not always unconditional. I got IBS. It's always with conditions. Oh dear, how lovely! What a great topic. All
All
right, should
right.
we do it
Well,
all again next week and cause controversy and mayhem?
that's yes. Let's.
All right, let me get my little script up because I always forget what I'm supposed to say. I'm too busy thinking, "Oh, what have I learnt tonight? I'm gonna
Yeah.
think about this," and I get excited. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us again for this episode. Remember, you can join us live on Facebook, on our Facebook page, A Guided Life Podcast.
And you can also subscribe to the podcast through Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and many others.
Thank you to our sponsor, Holistic Bliss Magazine, and to all of you, oh, excuse me, who are supporting our work. I went out the same way we started. Don't stress it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's even. It's even.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely week ahead. See you next Wednesday night.
Bye.
Bye.